In late March 2020, U.S. authorities announced a multi-million-dollar reward tied to charges against Venezuela's president, not for a cartel leader, not for a terrorist, or a sitting head of state. Nicolás Maduro now holds what prosecutors called one of the largest bounties on a head of state in recent memory. The charges: narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, conspiracy. Here's what makes this different from your typical true crime case. This suspect controls an entire nation's military, oil reserves, and gold mines. We'll examine how prosecutors built their narco-terrorism allegations and why sanctions, mercenaries, and a $15 million reward still haven't toppled him. But first, we need to understand how a president becomes the target of a criminal investigation. Maduro's path to becoming a narco-president began with Venezuela's economic collapse. By 2015, prosecutors allege hyperinflation had reached catastrophic levels. The currency became worthless. Oil prices collapsed. Government salaries couldn't buy basic groceries. Traditional revenue streams dried up overnight. According to U.S. authorities, this economic disaster created something unprecedented. Elements of the state apparatus allegedly turned to drug trafficking for survival. Venezuela's geographic position made it ideal for the cocaine trade. The country shares an 800-mile border with Colombia, the world's largest cocaine producer. Venezuelan ports offer direct shipping routes to Europe and North America. Weak border controls and corrupt officials allegedly created an open highway for narcotics. Prosecutors claim Maduro's inner circle formed partnerships with Colombian cartels. The FARC and ELN guerrilla groups controlled cocaine production across the border. Venezuelan officials allegedly provided safe passage through their territory in exchange for massive kickbacks. Investigators discovered that government planes regularly flew between Venezuela and Colombia with no manifests. Port authorities in La Guaira and Puerto Cabello allegedly allowed containers filled with cocaine to ship without inspection. The DEA began intercepting communications in 2016. According to prosecutors' filings, wiretapped phone calls allegedly revealed detailed discussions about cocaine shipments and payment schedules. One intercepted conversation allegedly captured a high-ranking Venezuelan official coordinating a 5,000-kilogram cocaine shipment through Caracas airport. Another wiretap allegedly recorded discussions about using diplomatic pouches to smuggle drugs into Europe. Federal prosecutors faced an impossible challenge. They possessed evidence of alleged massive drug trafficking operations, but the suspects controlled an entire nation's government. Traditional law enforcement tactics meant nothing when dealing with individuals protected by presidential immunity and military security. The investigation allegedly revealed the existence of the Cartel de los Soles, or Cartel of the Suns. This organization allegedly operated within Venezuela's military hierarchy. The name came from the sun insignias worn by Venezuelan generals. According to prosecutors, military officials controlled strategic ports, airports, and border crossings. They allegedly provided armed escorts for drug shipments. Venezuelan Air Force planes allegedly transported cocaine directly from Colombian airstrips to Caribbean islands. Prosecutors documented how military units allegedly cleared roads for drug convoys. Airport security officials allegedly disabled X-ray machines when specific flights arrived from Colombia. The military allegedly collected a percentage of every drug shipment that passed through Venezuelan territory. The case against Maduro himself came together in 2019. Prosecutors claimed they had wiretapped conversations placing him at meetings where drug trafficking operations were discussed. Financial records allegedly showed suspicious payments flowing through accounts linked to his government. Witnesses allegedly provided testimony about direct orders from Maduro to facilitate cocaine shipments. The evidence suggested he personally authorized the transformation of Venezuela's military into a drug trafficking organization. Prosecutors took an unprecedented step. They charged a sitting head of state with narco-terrorism. The indictment accused Maduro of leading a criminal enterprise that shipped tons of cocaine into the United States. It alleged he used drug profits to maintain power while his citizens starved. The charges detailed a government that had allegedly abandoned legitimate governance. Ministers allegedly negotiated directly with cartel leaders. Military commanders allegedly provided security for drug labs. Government aircraft allegedly transported cocaine across international borders. but criminal charges against the sitting president protected by an entire military presented an obvious problem. How do you arrest someone who controls tanks, fighter jets, and thousands of armed soldiers? The answer would involve mercenaries, speedboats, and one of the most bizarre invasion attempts in modern history. Two former Green Berets washed up on a Venezuelan beach in May 2020. Luke Denman and Aaron Berry had attempted to infiltrate Venezuelan waters using speedboats. Within hours, Venezuelan forces captured them. Their on-camera statements described a plan to capture Maduro and claimed links to opposition figures, though U.S. officials denied directing the mission. The failed operation became known as Operation Gideon. According to various reports, a private security firm led by former Special Forces operator Jordan Goudreau had pitched an audacious scheme. His company, Silvercorp USA, operated out of Florida with ambitious plans but limited resources. Some reporting suggested contacts with Venezuelan opposition figures, and Goudreau claimed U.S. support for physically capturing Maduro using mercenaries and Venezuelan dissidents. Recruitment allegedly began in late 2019. The operation targeted financially desperate former soldiers with combat experience. Venezuelan exiles living in Colombia provided local knowledge and contacts. The invasion force consisted of approximately 60 fighters, mostly Venezuelan dissidents with minimal military training, and a handful of American mercenaries leading the operation. Operation Gideon launched on May 3, 2020. The plan collapsed immediately. Boat engines failed in rough seas. Venezuelan coastal radar detected the infiltrators before they reached shore. Security forces surrounded the landing zones within minutes. Most fighters surrendered without firing a shot. Denman and Berry appeared on Venezuelan state television within days. They described participating in a plot to capture the president and revealed details about their recruitment and training. Their statements created a diplomatic crisis. American officials scrambled to distance the government from the failed operation, with intelligence agencies denying approval or support for the invasion attempt. Who really authorized this operation? Private ambition, opposition desperation, or something else? The disconnect between official policy and the mercenary scheme became clear through subsequent investigations. The operation represented a rogue effort by private actors exploiting government rhetoric about regime change. Analysts argue the operation played into Maduro's hands by providing propaganda opportunities. Venezuelan media broadcast footage of captured Americans as proof of U.S. aggression. Government officials claimed the invasion justified increased security measures. Maduro used the incident to purge suspected dissidents from his administration and rally nationalist sentiment. The Gideon fiasco demonstrated why military solutions had failed repeatedly in Venezuela. Maduro controlled professional armed forces with modern equipment. His intelligence services had penetrated opposition groups. Geographic factors favored defenders over invaders. International law prohibited direct military intervention without massive political costs. The failed invasion proved that bounties and military action alone couldn't topple a sitting president protected by an entire nation's security apparatus. American policymakers needed a different approach. They would target something even more vital than Maduro himself. Venezuela's oil wealth became the target. Sanctions against Venezuelan officials and the oil sector ramped up across the late 2000s, evolving from surgical strikes against individual officials into comprehensive economic warfare designed to collapse the entire financial system. The strategy aimed to make governing so expensive that Maduro's inner circle would abandon him to save themselves. The oil sector faced immediate restrictions. Venezuela's economy depended almost entirely on petroleum exports for government revenue. U.S. sanctions significantly reduced Venezuela's access to U.S. markets and complicated long-standing trade relationships. The restrictions extended to international firms doing business in the United States. Any company caught trading Venezuelan oil faced massive fines and exclusion from American markets. PDVSA, Venezuela's state oil company, lost access to American refineries that had long-standing arrangements and technical capacity to process Venezuela's heavy crude. The company had operated for decades selling oil to Gulf Coast refineries in Texas and Louisiana. These facilities possess specialized equipment needed to refine Venezuela's thick, sulfur-heavy petroleum. Alternative buyers in Asia and Europe lacked similar refining capacity. PDVSA was forced to sell oil at steep discounts to compensate for additional processing costs. Major international oil firms scaled back Venezuelan operations under sanctions pressure. Companies with significant operations in both Venezuela and the United States faced impossible choices between markets. Most selected American business relationships over Venezuelan contracts. PDVSA lost decades-long partnerships and technical expertise within months. Ordinary Venezuelans suffered immediate consequences from the economic restrictions. Fuel shortages paralyzed transportation networks in a country that had previously enjoyed some of the world's cheapest gasoline. Hospitals lost power during blackouts caused by insufficient fuel for generators. Food distribution collapsed as trucks sat empty at gas stations. Agricultural production declined when farmers couldn't operate machinery or transport crops to markets. The sanctions triggered complex evasion schemes involving hostile nations. Allies and commercial partners used a variety of workarounds, from loans for oil to creative shipping to keep revenue flowing. These transactions allowed continued revenue flow despite American restrictions. Gold trading sanctions targeted another revenue source. Venezuela possessed massive gold reserves stored in central bank vaults and active mining operations in the Amazon basin. The restrictions prohibited American companies from purchasing Venezuelan gold or providing related financial services. Maduro allegedly began selling gold reserves to fund government operations as oil revenues declined. Venezuelan officials constructed elaborate networks of shell companies to circumvent financial restrictions. Transactions flowed through banks in Turkey, Russia, and China to avoid American oversight. Front companies in Dubai and Hong Kong facilitated gold and oil trades. Cryptocurrency exchanges processed payments outside traditional banking systems. The schemes required constant adaptation as American authorities identified and sanctioned each new network. The sanction strategy produced an unexpected result. Rather than weakening Maduro's control, the economic pressure eliminated potential opposition funding sources. Venezuelan businesses that might have supported regime change lost access to international markets. Middle-class professionals emigrated rather than organizing resistance. The government maintained power through military loyalty while civil society collapsed. Humanitarian organizations reported shortages of medical supplies and breakdowns in public services. Educational institutions lost access to international academic networks. Infrastructure projects stopped when foreign contractors withdrew from the country. The restrictions intended to pressure government officials instead devastated the general population. The comprehensive sanctions regime failed to achieve regime change after years of implementation. Maduro remained in power despite severe economic pressure. His government adapted to restrictions through criminal networks and partnerships with hostile nations. The strategy may have actually strengthened authoritarian control by eliminating independent economic actors and forcing complete dependence on the state. But the real prize, and the reason so many global actors kept watching, was Venezuela's natural wealth. Venezuela holds among the world's largest proven oil reserves, measured in the hundreds of billions of barrels according to some estimates. Maduro controls access to all of it. The crisis extends far beyond one corrupt leader and his criminal network. Venezuela's reserves rank among the world's largest, making the country strategically valuable for global energy markets for decades to come. The numbers reveal the true scale of what's at stake. Venezuela's oil reserves could supply current world consumption for nearly 8 years according to industry estimates. American refineries along the Gulf Coast were specifically designed to process Venezuelan heavy crude oil. These facilities invested billions in specialized equipment that handles the thick, sulfur-heavy petroleum extracted from Venezuelan fields. Venezuela's heavy crude plays a specialized role in global refining processes, which increased its strategic importance. Venezuelan heavy crude serves as a critical component in global supply chains. Refineries blend it with lighter crude oils to produce gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. The unique properties of Venezuelan oil make it valuable in certain industrial processes. Petrochemical plants use Venezuelan crude to manufacture plastics, synthetic materials, and chemical compounds. Losing access to these reserves forces expensive modifications to existing infrastructure. The Orinoco Arc region contains Venezuela's most valuable mining operations beyond petroleum. Estimates suggest significant gold deposits in both official mines and illegal extraction sites. Government officials allegedly profit from unauthorized mining operations conducted by criminal organizations. Armed groups control mining territories and pay percentages to Venezuelan authorities. Analysts identify a large illegal mining economy that generates substantial off-the-books revenue outside traditional banking systems. Environmental groups have documented expanding scars on the Amazon and mercury contamination linked to illegal mining operations. Illegal miners clear forest areas annually to access gold deposits beneath the jungle floor. Mercury used in gold extraction poisons waterways that supply indigenous communities. Satellite imagery shows expanding damage across protected territories as unregulated mining spreads throughout the region. China and Russia increased economic and diplomatic support through loans, energy deals, and technical cooperation, helping Maduro weather sanctions while American restrictions isolated the country. China provided substantial loans backed by future oil deliveries. Russian energy companies signed extraction agreements covering Venezuelan territory. These deals granted foreign powers long-term influence over strategic resources in America's sphere of influence. The geopolitical implications extend throughout Latin America. Chinese and Russian military advisors operate in Venezuelan territory. Russian naval vessels conduct exercises in Caribbean waters. Chinese facilities monitor regional communications and satellite traffic. Venezuelan ports provide staging areas for hostile nation activities across the Western Hemisphere. Analysts assess that Maduro leveraged resource wealth to maintain power, despite complete international isolation from democratic nations. Control of oil and gold revenues appears to fund security apparatus operations and military loyalty payments. Resource sales finance weapons purchases and intelligence operations. Control of natural resources allows the government to survive sanctions that would collapse other regimes. The resource competition intensified as global powers recognized Venezuela's strategic importance. European nations attempted to maintain access to Venezuelan oil through complex financial arrangements. India and Turkey increased petroleum purchases to fill domestic energy needs. Each transaction undermined American sanctions while providing Maduro additional revenue streams. Environmental monitoring organizations documented massive ecological destruction caused by unregulated resource extraction. Oil spills contaminated coastlines and fishing grounds throughout the Caribbean region. Illegal mining operations release toxic chemicals into river systems that flow across international borders. The environmental damage affects neighboring countries that cannot control Venezuelan territory. Control of Venezuelan resources became central to great power competition in Latin America. The outcome determines whether democratic nations or authoritarian regimes dominate regional energy markets. Success or failure in Venezuela influences similar conflicts in other resource-rich nations facing internal instability. The combination of natural wealth and criminal governance created an unprecedented challenge for international law enforcement. Traditional justice systems had never confronted a suspect protected by an entire nation's resources and military power. The multi-million-dollar reward remains uncollected years later. Maduro continues ruling Venezuela from the presidential palace in Caracas. His case demonstrates a fundamental problem in international law enforcement. Practical and legal barriers, like claims of sovereign immunity, lack of extradition cooperation, and military protection, make arrest difficult in practice. Diplomatic recognition prevents foreign intervention. This investigation revealed 3 key findings. Criminal charges against sitting presidents face unprecedented enforcement challenges. Economic sanctions failed to achieve regime change, and resource wealth enables authoritarian survival. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more investigative deep dives into international crime. Check the description for source links and additional reading on this case. The Maduro case raises a disturbing question about modern accountability. When the accused commands an army and a state, how do investigators turn an indictment into an arrest? Tell us what you think in the comments. Was Operation Gideon a failed coup, a mercenary stunt, or something darker? If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks for watching and see you next time.